Gracias por continuar en el Canal del Congreso. El día de hoy estamos pues con la visita de David Carter. Él es presidente de la Cámara de Representantes de Nueva Zelanda. Muchas gracias por estar con nosotros aquí en el Canal del Congreso.
Thank you very much for having us. We're thoroughly enjoying our time here.
Sabemos que durante esta visita que está realizando a nuestro país, a México, tendrá diferentes reuniones con legisladores de nuestro país. ¿Cuál es su apreciación sobre la relación bilateral entre nuestros países, México y Nueva Zelanda, y principalmente en la relación parlamentaria que tiene Nueva Zelanda con este Senado mexicano?
Well, of course, we are very, very close friends with Mexico, having established relationships over 40 years ago. But we are also distant neighbours. We have so much in common. It is critical that we take every opportunity to strengthen the relationship. And one of the purposes of this trip is I bring 4 other members of Parliament from the New Zealand House of Representatives across 4 different political parties, and together we have the opportunity to engage closely with your senators and members of your chamber. Personal contact is extremely important if we want to strengthen the relationship and genuinely have a liaison between politicians of both countries. Having been a member of Parliament for 21 years, I have a really strong interest in good, sound democracy. And I passionately believe that the more exchange we have between politicians anywhere in the world, we help each other to deliver better democracies within our own countries. So that is the main purpose of the visit, and the hospitality that has been shown to us in the 3 days that we've been here has been very, very warm, and we thank you for it.
México y Nueva Zelanda, nuestros países, forman parte de un convenio muy ambicioso. Estoy hablando del Acuerdo de Asociación Transpacífico, el TPP por sus siglas en inglés. Desde su punto de vista, platícanos un poco cuáles serían las ventajas de su país, de Nueva Zelanda, en este acuerdo, las principales ventajas, y cómo va el proceso de ratificación en la Cámara de Representantes de su país.
Well, of course, New Zealand is a very small nation, very distant geographically from the rest of the world. We are only 4.6 million people. We are very good at agriculture. We therefore produce a lot more food than we can eat ourselves within our own country. So export and the ability to fairly export anywhere in the world is passionately important to New Zealanders. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is a huge opportunity for all countries that have signed the agreement. And whilst not every New Zealander is supportive of the TPP, as I suspect not every Mexican is supportive of TPP, I have no doubt the great majority of people in both countries appreciates the ability of people to trade more freely. And while our expertise is obviously agriculture, we're not big producers, and often our dairy industry is cited by other dairy farmers from around the world as a threat to their own industries. It is not so. We produce only 2% of the world's dairy products. So I see a huge opportunity as we in New Zealand develop the TPP process through our Parliament, which will be done by the end of this year. I then see a huge opportunity for us to be able to trade more freely with countries such as Mexico, but I equally see huge advantages for Mexico to be able to trade further with New Zealand. And there are some things that Mexico is substantially better at than New Zealand will ever be good at, such as vehicle production. And we already receive a lot of our vehicles assembled and produced here in Mexico down in New Zealand. So the opportunities for trade, I think, will increase the livelihoods of both Mexicans and New Zealanders, and that is to be applauded.
México y Nueva Zelanda comparten diversos valores democráticos. Una de las principales preocupaciones para ambos países y para muchos más es el tema del cambio climático. Desde esta perspectiva, platíquenos un poco cuáles han sido las estrategias que ha realizado el Parlamento de Nueva Zelanda para combatir este problema que es el cambio climático, para sentar bases que nos ayuden a disminuir el aumento de la temperatura y combatir los efectos de este cambio climático?
Well, again, I think the whole issue of climate change has been one that I've watched very closely during my 20-odd years in the New Zealand Parliament. I think now we've moved to the stage where nearly every person in New Zealand appreciates the threat that climate change poses not only to New Zealand, but to the population of the world and therefore to the economies of the world. Within the New Zealand Parliament, we have 7 political parties, so there is a diversity of views around climate change and what legislation we should pass to combat the effects of climate change. And that's what democracy is all about. We should have difference of opinions, and we should have the ability to debate those differences of opinion in our Parliament and come to a consensus as to how to proceed. We developed an emissions trading scheme in around 2007 under a former left-wing Labor government. It was modified in 2009 by a right-wing national government, but the essence of the legislation remains the same. And we now have a price on carbon that means that heavy emitters have to justify that or pay the cost of their emissions. The only issue that we have exempted in our legislation at this stage is the issue of emissions from agriculture. And the reason for that is twofold. One, at this stage, agriculture is so important to the New Zealand economy, to put a carbon cost on agriculture would be devastating to New Zealand farmers. But secondly, there are yet, at this stage, no solutions for agricultural greenhouse gas emissions. And I passionately believe that if our scientists work together around the world, they will come up with means of growing pastures that animals can eat and thereby emit less greenhouse gas and methane than they do at the moment. So time will solve this challenge. And the challenge isn't not only New Zealand, it's Mexico as well. And therefore I'm thrilled that we have established the Global Research Alliance, and Mexico was one of the first countries to join New Zealand, and even today our scientists are working collaboratively to find solutions.
Sabemos que ser presidente de la Cámara de Representantes de Nueva Zelanda no es algo fácil, es uno de los puestos más importantes. Cuéntenos un poco cómo fue la vivencia de esta selección para llegar a este grado en el que está usted.
Well, of course, I've been a Member of Parliament now for nearly 22 years. So I've been a Member of Parliament who spent time in government as Minister. I've spent time in opposition, and then I spent time prior to becoming the Speaker or President of the New Zealand Parliament. I was the Minister for Primary Industries. When a government is formed after an election, and we hold an election every 3 years, the first task of that Parliament is to elect its President or Speaker. I think in looking to make that decision, parliamentarians look for somebody they know has had a long political experience, but they also look for somebody who is prepared to leave his own political affiliations to one side and become Parliament's person. So when I go into Parliament to chair any session, I am not there to help the government. I'm not there to help the opposition. I'm there to help every member of Parliament, regardless of which political party that person belongs to, provided that person then plays by the rules of our Parliament. And I take that challenge very, very seriously every day that Parliament sits. But having said that, it is a tremendous honour to have the opportunity and be elected by my fellow parliamentarians to be the Speaker of the New Zealand House of Representatives.
Finalmente, y bueno, agradeciendo que esté con nosotros aquí en el Canal del Congreso, ya nos adelantaba un poco del Parlamento de Nueva Zelanda. Platíquenos un poco más, sabemos que es unicameral, cuál es el proceso de selección, cada cuándo se renueva, en fin, unos pequeños detalles de lo que es el Parlamento de Nueva Zelanda, por favor.
The New Zealand Parliament is elected at a general election every 3 years. Anybody can stand for election, but most people join one political party, of which we currently have 7 represented in the New Zealand Parliament. We have currently 121 members of Parliament. So again, I think your comment is that it's unicameral, one house, 121 members. It's a simple, workable system. But bear in mind that New Zealand is a small, relatively unpopulated country. We changed our electoral system in 1996, and we now have a system called a mixed member proportional system, or MMP, based very similarly on the German system. It means most members of Parliament represent a constituency or a locality, but there are some members of Parliament who are elected from a parliamentary list and come in with special skills. I'm, for instance, now currently a list member of Parliament. But the interesting thing is that since we introduced this new system in 1996, we have not had one party that has had enough seats to form a government. Every government we've had since that time has been what we call a coalition government, involving a number of parties coming together, discussing policy and meeting an agreement or a compromise on some policy initiatives. I think that has delivered for New Zealand far stronger government, a better democracy. We pride ourselves in acknowledging that our democratic system is very open, very transparent, absolutely free of corruption, and New Zealanders have the opportunity to engage with our politicians on a very frequent basis if they choose to.
Le agradecemos mucho haber estado aquí con nosotros en el Canal del Congreso y regalarnos estas palabras para nuestro auditorio.
And thank you very much for the hospitality that's been shown to myself and to my accompanying 4 members of Parliament. We've had a wonderful time. We've learnt a lot about Mexico. I was here on a parliamentary visit in 2005, and I can sense the power and the dynamism within the country and the process that it's made in the last decade, and I congratulate Mexico for it.
Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias.
Y muchas gracias a todos ustedes por habernos acompañado en esta interesante plática con David Carter, presidente de la Cámara de Representantes de Nueva Zelanda. Los invitamos a que continúen en la señal del Canal del Congreso. Muchas gracias. Hasta la próxima.